Hey, what's up, everybody? John Highley here with the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast, bringing you another episode with my co-host that be bringing the most, Miss Angela Highley.
Mm-hmm.
So how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
It's doing good. You were just saying that the camera was judging you.
Yes.
So apparently cameras can judge.
This camera is very judgy right now.
Yeah, so anyhow, y'all, welcome back to the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast, where today we're going to be going into a very interesting subject that I feel needs to be talked about again. I believe probably years ago we've talked about this, and we've had our different versions of how things played out based on particular timelines, where we were at in life. And now looking back, we want to talk about, what it was like not only running a paintless dent removal business, but doing it with your significant other, your wife, your spouse, your girlfriend, however that plays out, how that affects not only the business.
I feel like just working with your spouse in general, whether you're working with them in business, you guys are running a business together, or whether you guys work separately, but you work together at home as well.
Yeah, so 100%. And what we're going to talk about is not only some of the challenges, because I do believe a lot of people leave out the challenges.
Yes.
But there's also there's pros and there's cons, right? So there's a lot of pros as well. There's a lot of things that I think would help a lot of you guys, especially some of y'all out there that are having a little bit of a problem growing and scaling. Having that additional hand, and also an individual, because as many of you guys know, when we get married, typically that other person is opposite to us, or there's a lot of qualities that other person has that compensates for our weaknesses. And that's one of the ultimate pros of going into business. I mean, and we talked about this. Not only do you have an individual that you can trust, whether that's your wife or your significant other, which is hard. That's one of the hard things to find in business, is just a trustworthy partner, somebody that you can.
But I think also, like, when you talk about trust, that trust is not, that trust is going to be broken though too.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be situations where you have to navigate through, because
exactly.
But at the end of the day, the ultimate trust hopefully is never broken, because I don't believe that our ultimate trust has ever been broken. However, I've broken some rules, and many of you guys know my story of previously, day drinking and things like that.
No, you definitely broke the trust.
I definitely did break the trust.
You broke the trust, and you had to earn that.
Sure.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what it was is, like, I loved you, and I trusted you, but you didn't have, like, my full trust back. Do you see what I'm saying? And I think that's like, you just got to.
But our situation's very unique. So, I mean, I'm not going to really talk about or go into details of our particular situation, because the truth of the matter is that's not going to help you at all, because you guys want to hear my story. You can go back, you can read it on social media, you can go back a few podcasts, and you can absolutely hear that story. So I'm not going to take the time in this episode to bring that back up.
Is like that happens.
Yeah, so it can happen, right? Especially if you're one of the wild ones, and if you're a dent tech, I mean, there's like a 50-50 chance that you might be one of them ones. And but ultimately, at the end of the day, what we found working together is that we were able to significantly grow the business, because there was things that I couldn't do as well as her. In fact, I can remember.
And what would that be?
Well, I would say talking to people for elongated times on the phone, like I wanted to hang up on them. And I didn't have the patience that you had.
Yes.
I also made a lot of mistakes when it came to scheduling, where you eventually got my schedule in order. And essentially, you got things in order that I was...
Because I love details and you don't.
Right. And I was living in chaos. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of chaos in my world, because you know how it is, guys. We're going like 1,000 miles an hour in every single direction. And when we first started the business, I was the secretary, I was the janitor, I was the technician, I was the entrepreneur, right? And when you're wearing that many hats, you don't have a lot of time to nurture particular things like client relationships, or sit there and hear people out on the phone of why their dent happened, or to tell that story of how it happened, right? And so what she noticed about me right off the bat is that I was very short with people, and that I was...
Well, also, like, another thing is you would be doing a dent repair and the phone would be ringing, and it's not like you could stop doing the dent repair and answer the telephone at the same time. So when you told me, I think it was like one time, I mean, this was like way back in the day, you're just like, I just threw the phone in the back seat and just didn't answer the phone at all. And I knew that at that time, that's when I needed to like step in and help you out. But at the same time, when I was going to be stepping into helping you out, I'm just thinking like in the back of my head, like, am I going to be able to do this job the right way? Like, am I going to be able to bring money into this business, like closing those appointments? And I was just thinking like, oh dear Lord, like, please, sweet baby Jesus, like, let this work out, because I didn't want to like let you down. And then next thing, turn around and you'd be like, well, my wife can't do this job for me. So
so there's a little bit of fear of that. And I'll tell you, like, I was willing to ride this one to the end, because when she did first take over the phone, I can remember this to the T, I had about 2 weeks scheduled in our books.
Yes.
Meaning that I had about 2 weeks worth of appointments. And I can remember that she never scheduled an appointment up until we were almost out of appointments. And it went almost 2 weeks, and she was getting very frustrated, and I believe that you were disappointed in yourself.
Well, of course. I think anybody would.
Right. But I just continued to ride this out, and I allowed her to do what she does best. And it was like, it's like everything, the way that God pushes us, right? He always pushes us right to the edge.
Yes.
And maybe even a little bit past the edge.
Yes.
And when he realizes that we won't give up in our natural, he comes in his supernatural and puts his hand on it.
That's right.
And that's the way it's always been for me in business, regardless of this situation. But that's the way this situation did work out. So this situation worked out at a point to where she was discouraged, she was frustrated, and I wouldn't stop. I kept telling her, nope, this is you. This is what you're going to do. This is what we've got to do. And it was we were basically about out of appointments. And I can remember that you had a day where all of a sudden you booked out our whole week. And what she realized is the people that she was probably cultivating relationships within them 2 weeks started to schedule with her, and on top of people calling and scheduling then, right? So she started to get that momentum built up. And then once you got that momentum built up, I don't think you ever stopped scheduling appointments from that point on.
Yeah. And I think that's like probably like one of the biggest things, especially with a husband and wife like working together. If the wife is doing more of like, I guess like, secretarial work, booking appointments and taking phone calls and all this in nature, is just kind of like, in a way, you kind of like get discouraged, and you don't really want to give up on that. That's the thing. That's like the biggest thing with anything, right? Is just like discouragement. And it's so easy, I would say, especially for me, sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to like let my husband down. And then next thing you know, I get discouraged and then just crawl back into my shell.
But that never happened.
No.
We continued to push through and continue to push through. And it was interesting because she becomes like your gatekeeper, where nobody gets through you unless they come through your wife.
I've always been your gatekeeper.
Well, if you look at that biblically, that's actually what the woman is supposed to be, because women sense things like more on a spiritual level than most men. And they can typically see who a certain type of person is. Like us men would be like, oh man, nah, that's Joe. But the woman would be like, I don't know what Joe's up to, right? And
yeah, like
so
I don't like that feeling that Joe's giving me.
They're much more suspicious in that regard, and that makes them the perfect gatekeeper for us. And also, when you have an individual like your wife working with you, like she knows my schedule. She would know if I was going out of town or we were going out of town as a family on that next Friday. And there's not as many scheduling mistakes or mishaps, or she would know that I like to go somewhere at a particular time, or I want to be at a certain place at a particular time.
But also, like, one of my, I would say good things about myself, or one of my qualities is like I'm a planner. Yeah. Even though sometimes that does get tiring when you're like the one planning all of the stuff out. But that's like one of my things I've always been good at is planning. I'm a planner. I love details. I love organization. I love structure.
And I love going by the seat of my ass. I thrive.
Probably like, how does this relationship even work?
Well, it's
like, how do they do it?
Most people's relationships are exactly the opposite, and it was designed to be that way, because not only were we meant to kind of drive each other crazy to bring out our typical, insecurities or things inside of us that bother us that really shouldn't bother us.
And John and I drive each other crazy. Like, there's times, even like today, there was a customer that emailed us, and John took care of this customer, and I was talking to Jonathan, and then John looked at me and he's like, shh. And I was just like, okay, I get it that you needed a moment of silence, and maybe me and Jonathan should have like moved ourselves out of the room and talked about it like in a different location.
Well, no, she was going to Dr. Phil him.
But it was the way that you did it, because you were like, shh. And I was just like, who in the world does he think he is shushing?
I know who I'm shushing, and I know why I was doing it.
I was like, all I want to do right now is like either throat punch you or like poke you in the eyes.
So that's another situation.
But I would never do that though.
So that's another situation that y'all have to realize, is that when ultimately we're going to, her and me, myself, are going to talk to each other much more bluntly, and you're going to get angry faster with your spouse. Why? Because it's human nature. Simply to know that you have somebody that loves you and won't leave you, that you can actually, you actually, it's the weirdest thing in human nature that you get angrier with individuals or snappier with individuals that you are the closest to, because we know that we won't leave them.
That is
so there's going to be things
true.
that you're going to say to your significant other that's going to follow you home, and it's going to be simply something that you wouldn't say to an employee. That you would bite your tongue.
You would bite your tongue on that, because you're thinking like, do I really want to get that angry with this individual and like truly hurt their feelings?
Sure.
No. We have like so much more control, right? But not with like when it comes to.
And that's not just me; that's her too.
Absolutely.
And to be honest with you, it's across the board. We know a lot of entrepreneurs that. It's literally across the board in any husband and wife working situation.
It's the same scenarios.
And sometimes, guys, here's what you got to remember is that, there's going to be times when, and many of you guys know this, even if you do not currently work with your spouse, when you're in the middle of doing something and your mind is locked in on something and your spouse just randomly calls you to see how your day is going, I mean, it almost enrages you, right?
But it's like out of the kindness of my heart.
Right.
Like it's out of the kindness of my heart. It's not like I'm intentionally like, yes, I want to call my husband up, and I know that he's in the middle of doing something so important, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna like
But the key
put a fire under his ass, not a good way.
But the key is on this podcast is like, we're not going to fluff you up. I'm not going to act like we're some perfect couple. And I'm telling you, there is not any perfect couple that has this mastered. Like every couple, I know couples that work together and they act like the most flawless couples in the world in their facade that they show to the rest of the world. Unfortunately, that gives us some sort of false reality.
It's a bunch of bullshit. That's what it really is. Like plain and simple, it's a bunch of bullshit. Listen, when two people that are two different types of personalities and they get together and they're working together and they're doing life together and they're married and they got all this stuff going on, like, you really think that, like, we are 100% perfect. Like, there's no book. Well, there's a lot of like marriage books out there, but there's not like this guide that says this is what you need to do when you run into this situation, or when you run into that situation, or run into this situation, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So, most people just show a facade of what they want the rest of the world to see. And ultimately, what you guys got to understand is that this marriage thing, and now this is a biblical thing here, guys. So this marriage thing, we were actually designed by God to push each other's buttons and learn how to control ourselves, learn how to respond appropriately, to learn how to not allow things to upset us as much. And that's going to be an ongoing battle that sharpens us. In fact, I have a spiritual mentor of mine that studies the Bible very, very deeply. And one of the things that he told me is that there was a young man that came to him and asked him when he should get married. And the spiritual mentor told the young man, he said, when you have nothing left to do. And what he meant by that was that when you've worked on yourself to the level that you are the best you can possibly be as a single man, then you should marry, because you're going to have a slew of additional problems that are getting ready to come into your life.
Yeah.
And these particular problems are actually designed to make us better, to make us whole.
There are those blind spots.
Yeah, and here's the thing, y'all. It's like each and every issue that you have with your wife, okay, is going to be issues that you have with the rest of the world. And same thing with the wife. Every issue she has with her husband, she carries that into the rest of the world. So what happens is, as we get into this situation where we're working together and we're committed to becoming better together, we get into a situation where not only do we become better for each other, we actually become better products for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Meaning that we can serve the world at a higher level. So there's a lot. Yes, it's going to be frustrating. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, there are going to be times when the work comes home with you.
Yeah.
And it never stops. There's going to be
lots of tears.
Well, there was lots of tears for her.
Lots of tears.
And there's going to be situations. However, is it worth it? It's absolutely worth it. In fact, I believe that the family business was God's design. And we get the opportunity to work together, to function together, to live together, and ultimately solve the issues that we have inside of us together.
Yeah.
That not only make us a better product for each other, but for the rest of the world. Because, you could say now, if you want to look back into she started working for the company, the Paintless Dent Removal company, 15, 16 years ago?
You and I have always been working together. Even from the very beginning when we lived in our little apartment and I worked for Evenflow, and then that was your chance to start up the PDR business. So the PDR business wasn't, obviously since it was brand new, it's not like it's going to just take off like that. I was working at Evenflow from 9 to 5, and then I'd pick Jonathan up from daycare, and then we would go back to your mom and dad's and detail cars till 11, 12 o'clock at night, and get up and do that again while you were out, hustling, trying to get work to get the PDR business, off the ground.
Yeah. So, it's fair to say that we had much worse arguments when we first started, right? We're younger,
yes.
We're going through particular things. As time goes on, our little arguments might be her telling her to shh today, right? To shh. I harshly said shh. And
just how dare him tell
me. At the end of the day, that's the extent of our arguments. We're not mad at each other very long. She may walk away. I don't even think she was mad at me at all today over that. Maybe a few minutes or something like that.
I wanted to poke your eyeballs out.
Yeah. But before it may have a long time ago, it may have erupted into a bigger argument. And we just hope that we can circumvent that process for you guys and let you know that this is perfectly natural. And not only is your frustration with each other perfectly natural, it's actually designed to make you better. And it's actually
Believe it or
designed
not.
to little by
Would have
little,
known.
God knows, and he'd written about it in the Bible.
But I think what it is,
a lot of people don't read it anymore.
Like sometimes when the going gets tough, it's like people just are just like, wow, just be with this.
Everybody's just willing to throw in the towel. And part of it's they think the grass is going to be greener on the other side.
The grass is never greener on the other side.
I have seen a lot of people. It's very rare that I ever see anybody where the grass is greener on the other side.
No.
And the truth of the matter is, if they don't handle the situation that they're in, assuming that there's not physical abuse and things like that.
Yeah.
But if they don't handle the situation that they're in, if it's just emotional, if it's just in a relationship level, and you can't handle or figure out a way to work through that, then that's just going to come back in your next relationship.
Yeah.
So whatever happens, whatever maturity level you're there, it's going to come back in your next relationship. And there's also something that's like a biblical principle. And one of my mentors shared this with me, is that there's individuals that, relationship problems are where God's mercy is most merciful, right? So if it's just a relationship problem, a personality issue, an argument, that's a very merciful place to fix yourself, right?
Yes.
And that's usually God's first line of communication to us, right? Mm-hmm. And it's that obviously you're trying to function with this other human being that's opposite of you, and they see your bad spots, your good spots. You see their bad spots and good spots, but we got the opportunity to change and become better together, right?
Yeah.
But what happens is people refuse to do that, and they refuse to accept that message is coming to them through the person that they're closest to. Mm-hmm. So what happens is they never correct in that relationship, and then all of a sudden their problems will move to their business.
Yes.
And if that problem's not corrected in the relationship, it moves to your business. Mm-hmm. And then, God forbid, the very last place that problems can actually move to would be in your health. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to face them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every health situation has to do with this, but I will tell you there is an incredible correlation. If you look at Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, and you start looking deeper into the way stress and these type of things affect your health, it is incredible how you can hold on to something like envy or grudges and things like that, and it like literally keeps you stagnant inside, where your cells are not.
But also you're running away from that issue, and that
you can't run away from the health thing.
I know, but what I'm saying is like, if you're going to run away from this situation, that situation is going to follow you. Yep. And normally what happens is that situation gets bigger and it gets bigger. So it's like the further you run, the bigger the situation is going to get. And then when it finally catches up to you and you kind of, instead of, I would say, stop running or maybe stop being bullheaded or stubborn, and you actually face it, then, it has grown and it's like this massive yucky thing compared to in the beginning, if you would have just said, hey, I messed up. I'm human. Mm-hmm. I'm not perfect. Let's go ahead and just deal with this. Let's just put our big pants on. I think that's what we as adults forget. It's we'll just run away from this and it'll be better the next time. And it's just come on now. We're grown adults. I get it. It's not fun being an adult. It's easier being a kid, but you got to put them big pants on.
Well, yeah, and the truth of the matter is, if you can fix that part of your personality or who you are in a relationship, it's going to be much easier than other things that could happen in your life.
Yeah.
And I mean, and who knows? I mean, it could just be that you're not willing to fix that problem, and it's just bleeding into other areas of your life.
Yes.
And it will get worse in them areas. So take your relationship very seriously when it comes to, especially if your wife says something. I know most of you guys are men out here listening to this show, but this goes for the women as well. But if your wife says something to you that really angers you or really bothers you, then you know that there's a deeper insecurity in there that you haven't brought to the surface yet. So it's at a point you got to stop, and you've got to not allow yourself to have reactive behavior to whatever that particular situation. I believe all of us got one. And I know if you men out there, you could probably think of one right now. That something that your wife says to you or does that just literally runs right through you, that angers you, that bothers you. You know, that right there would be the very first problem you need to fix.
Yeah.
And if you can get control of that thing, and if you can thank God for allowing that woman in your life to bring that to your attention, because there's something deeper in that. There's something inside there that you're not handling properly, you know?
But also you have to, be honest with yourself that, hey, I'm going to go ahead and work on this, and I'm going to correct it to the best of my ability. But it's not going to just be fixed 100%. Yeah. There's going to be times where that situation is going to rear its head up again, but then you have that choice to decide on how am I going to handle it. Am I going to handle it the old way on how I used to be, or am I going to handle it differently and see how that outcome happens?
Yeah. And one of the things that I want to give you guys as well is something that you want to look into. Like, I'll just give you an example. I used to get real uncomfortable every time my wife would ask me, like, how much money was coming in and all these kind of things. But it wasn't because I was worried about the money. And it was more along the lines of I didn't feel that she was asking me how much money was coming in. I felt she was asking me how good of a provider am I.
And that had nothing to do with that.
And that absolutely had nothing to do with it. So
I'm just tell me what's coming in, because I got to pay bills.
and it didn't matter how much money was coming in. It still used to like kind of like drive me crazy, because I would never tell her, and money would just keep appearing in the bank, and she had no idea, like, you know, when was coming in or what was coming in or how it was coming in.
But I didn't feel like secure though.
And see, she needed to hear often, because now what do? I wake you up and I tell you how much money is getting ready to be deposited through the week.
Yeah, and then basically I'm like, well, now, okay, so I'm going to pay this bill, this bill, this bill, and this bill.
Yeah. And what I found out for her, it doesn't matter how much money we have, guys. Like, it could be a bunch of money, but she still wants to know how much is coming in each and every week. Mm-hmm. And, she probably has a little bit of a thing to work on there, right?
No, I do.
And she knows it, and she knows that she does, because, it's like that whole thing. It's, if somebody, and I'm not giving my financial situation whatsoever, but I'm just going to give you an example, because I really don't like to talk about money like that, brag about it or anything like that. But you could have an individual. I mean, who do you think's like more upset? The individual that has $20,000 and loses $10,000, or the individual that has $20 million and loses $10 million? Which one is feeling more lack at that moment, right? Well, the guy who has 20 grand and has 10 grand is probably just fine. It probably wasn't long ago he had 10 grand and he made it to 20, right?
Yeah.
And so, but an individual who has 20 million loses 10 million, that individual might take their own life because of it, right? And so it's more along the lines about fixing that lack that's inside of all of us, right?
Yeah.
Because all of our behaviors, whether we're lashing out or whether something upsets us very quickly, it's coming from a place of lack inside of us.
Yeah.
So for me, when she was asking, no matter how much money we were making, she was asking about how much money was coming in. I didn't hear the money thing. I just heard, you don't trust me as a provider. And that was my lack. That was my insecurity. Now, her insecurity, on the other hand, was, no matter how much money we had, she always had to know, or else she felt like, the whole world was going down the drain, right?
And listen, I ain't gonna lie, like, I'm Chicken Little a lot of the times.
Yeah.
I am. But that has a lot to do with my anxiety disorder. And
but she would be the person that had 20 million and lost 10, and it'd be like, the world is over, But no, you still have $10 million. It's gonna be okay.
Well, I know it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
But a lot of it stems from the anxiety disorder, which stems from like further, issues as well.
One of the things that actually, I'll give you guys a little nugget before we move on, talk a little bit about something different. is that one of the things that I found to deliver yourself from any fear, and you guys knowing that that I'm a pastor now, and I do a lot of studying, biblically on how to get out of fear, because we know that fear is not from God, right? And we know that the enemy is the one that fills your mind with fear. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that I found, and one of the most important abundant principles that I've ever learned, is to literally accept that worst case scenario, meaning that if you lost everything, that you can look up to God and you can say, but God, I still have you. And when you put your security in the Lord and not that of physical things in this world, then the devil can't hook you and cause you to have all these fears that actually cause you to lose the thing. You see, fear paralyzes you. It gives you paralysis. It makes you don't want to move. You don't want to do anything. You're afraid. So when you finally say, oh, guess what? Oh, yeah, if I lost all my money, if I lost everything, I don't care. I still have God. And you put your security in the Lord, then that fear can't cling to you. It has to be delivered, right? Mm-hmm. And which actually allows the Lord to smile down upon you, because he sees and he feels your connection with him, knowing that he is your security, and he blesses you for that.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that like you just sit on the couch and eat potato chips all day.
Nobody said anybody's going to sit on the couch. Do you think that the Lord has us plant seeds and then he brings the rain?
No.
Yeah, you got to plant the seed.
No, I know you got to plant the
That's
seed.
That's just common sense.
Yeah, but I know, but like some people, like what you just said though, some people will be like, oh, so that means I can just like sit on the couch and eat potato chips?
Well, I mean, one day
But nothing's going to happen then after that though.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to give it your all though.
Yeah, you got to give it your all, right?
Yes.
Sure. So, that being said, I want to move on to another subject here that I want to talk about with you guys, because when she came on board answering the phones, she came from a call center. So she had worked in a place called Even Flow. Many of you guys probably have kids, have had their baby products and stuff like that. And so she had experience in the call center. I want you guys to, number one, think about your significant other. What kind of experience do they bring to the table, and what could they do in their position in your company that would actually bring the most value? And for us, the most value was answering the phones, doing the scheduling, doing all the customer service, doing all the emails and things like that. Now, that might be different in your case, but I really want you to look in and think about what that individual offers. And the second thing I want to talk about is something that Miss Angela Highley was very interesting. So I told you guys how we went through the 2 weeks where she didn't land any appointments for us, right? And so that was very discouraging for her. And then all of a sudden, like one day, they just took off, and then the compound effect started happening. Well, another thing that happened here, she got the sales for the door dings and the dent removals and all that stuff, but she couldn't quite do the hail damage stuff yet.
Well, that was just I think what it was, in all honesty, like if I look back at it, it had a lot to do with the price tag that was on that. That's the thing. So that was like that. There we go again. It was a little bit discouraging. I think, yeah, because like I didn't want to let you down by any means.
Yeah, so she knew that hail damage was a lot of money, and that was obviously our big ticket items.
Yeah.
So what would happen is when she got a hail damage lead, she would talk to them, and then I would give them a call, and I would close them.
Yes.
Now, that happened for a pretty lengthy amount of time. I mean, I could remember that we were in the Centerville shop before one day, one glorious day, she sat there. But
during that time, though, I was listening. Like, that's another, like, good quality of mine, is that I'm a very good listener and being very observant.
Yeah, so one day during this moment where she heard me on the phone talking to a hail damage client, mm-hmm. she heard enough of my, you want to call it a spiel, whatever. It's what I say to people when I'm talking about their hail damage car, to sell them on using us. And once she
I took
heard
out all of your
that,
key points.
She actually took out of all of our key points, and from then on, she started booking hail cars. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be, you got to remember, there's going to be kind of phases to this, right?
Yeah.
And also, you're going to have to train your significant other usually differently than you'll train another employee, right? So there's, well, for her anyway, for me, she wanted all my attention to train her. You know, it wasn't like one of them things where she always wanted me there over her shoulder working right with her.
No, I would not. I never wanted you like looking over my shoulder or any of that nature.
But you wanted one-on-one training from me.
Well, yeah, I think that like that's necessary in any like business. You're wanting at least a little bit of one-on-one training. I mean, like if I look back at when I worked at Evenflow, I mean, I had some one-on-one training and then they threw us out there and I'm like, okay. But I never was just like, oh, please look over my shoulder. Who in their right mind wants somebody like looking over their shoulder? That is like so intimidating.
Yeah. So there was like no video training or anything like that. She wanted me to train her personally.
And I took notes.
Yep. So there might be a little bit of personal attention that you're going to have to give above and beyond that. Again, this kind of just falls in the category of who your wife is to you, or your husband is to you, or your significant other. And you got to understand how it is that they learn, because they will want to learn the way they want to learn, and they'll typically put you in.
Well, everybody has here's another thing. Everybody has their own different learning style. So if you know your other half's learning style, that's going to be a lot easier too. And don't be like teaching them the way that like you want to be taught. Because remember, they're a different human.
Well, it's like gift giving, you know what I mean? You want to figure out what the other person likes and give them a good gift, right?
Yeah.
Because if you give people gifts that you like, they might not necessarily like them. It's kind of like the whole love language thing, right? Everybody has a different love language. Well, if we're talking about
gifts, like I know what to stay away with when it comes to you. Like, don't go out and buy you an outfit.
Oh, it's like that
I'll
time
bring it home.
That time she bought me a shirt that said organic on it.
John. I was back in our 20s. I didn't know anything at that time.
I always bring that up.
Shut up, will you? It might have been like a $5 or $10 t-shirt or something like that.
Yeah. Organic. I wish I had that t-shirt now.
No.
I would wear it.
I don't think it would fit you right.
Yeah.
It'd probably be all like stretched out and everything of that nature.
Yeah. That being said, we're getting ready for the Kingdom Power Life, our ministry. We got these Kingdom Power Life t-shirts that we're going to be launching here pretty soon. That's super exciting.
Yes.
And we're probably, she's talking about getting some more tactical shirts out there as well here soon.
You like totally made me lose my train of thought when you just said that damn organic shirt that I bought you probably.
You were telling me people gifts not to give me.
Oh, well, yeah, clothing.
Yeah.
Clothing.
Yeah. So anyhow, y'all, I think that is it for this episode. We wanted to bring something to you to, number one, just make you realize that there's a lot of couples out there who work together, and we know them. We've seen couples get up on stage.
What type of gifts do I like?
What type of gifts do you like?
Yeah.
Flowers.
Yeah.
And
if you hear a dog in the background, it's just Odin over there rolling around having a good old time.
I don't know. I bought you a bunch of different stuff. I bought you a jersey. You really like that? A LeBron James signed jersey.
Yeah, that's our heirloom though.
And then she looked at me like I had a third eyeball when I bought her a Bose speaker, and she uses that thing every day, day in and day out.
At first I was like, why did he buy me this portable speaker or this cordless speaker? And it's one of my favorite things.
One of her favorite things. So, yeah, make sure that you give your wifey gifts if she works with you too. And if she likes flowers, make sure you at least buy them occasionally. So
no, not occasionally.
As much as possible.
I recommend like once a week.
Yeah.
Or if you can't do once a week, at least do it a couple times a month.
There you go. That's another tech tip for you. So, all right, guys, we appreciate you for coming along on this episode of the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast. And as usual, we're going to see you on the next one.
That's right.